Hey guys, it's Amber. Welcome back to my Daniel Smith Watercolor Swatch Book series. This is part 3 of the focus on Phthalo Turquoise, where I'm going to sketch a balloon flower and paint it. So if you missed part 1, which was drawing this Zentangle journal page, or part 2, where I mixed and swatched all of the colors that you can see here on this Phthalo Turquoise journal page, then I'll be sure to link those in the top right-hand corner. So I'm just going to take a look at this swatch and see what colors are inspiring me. It was really these beautiful bright greens and a couple of those violet colors that were really speaking to me. So I googled purple flowers and what popped up was this balloon flower, which I'd never seen before. So I thought it would be fun to try and draw this. It also looked like it had some pretty elemental shapes that I might be able to pull off. So I've only drawn like 3 to 5 flowers in my lifetime. So I'm just winging it here, you guys. But what I decided to do was start with the elemental shapes. So I can see that this big balloon, or the smaller balloon over on the right, was mostly a circle. So I started with that. That also looked like it was in the forefront, so I wanted that in front. And then I'm just going to bisect it. That seemed pretty easy. So I'm just adding these small sections. And here I'm just counting to make sure I have the right number of them. Mine aren't spaced exactly like this balloon flower is, but it's a good start, I think. So I'm just adding these straight edges for now, but I will go back and tweak these lines a little bit so they get a little more curved and look a little more like the inspiration photo here. And so when I approach a photograph like this, the first thing that I look at is those, like I said, those large shapes. Then I start to identify the edges, kind of like the outline around it. And what really struck me about this flower was all of these points. I felt like if I just put those points and kind of did like a connect the dot situation, I would probably have more success than just trying to draw the outline freehand. So having those little anchor points I thought was a lot easier than, like I said, just drawing the outline in one fell swoop. So I was trying to figure out here, it didn't seem like I had the same amount of petals that the little balloon situation did have over there. So I was trying to reconcile the number of petals that I should have with what I actually see in the photos, and it really wasn't adding up, but I just went with what I could see. And I'll pull the phone back over in just a moment so that you can see the picture again. But I'm just trying to work through the center here. There's absolutely no need to put in all of the detail of the flower, especially for a sketchbook or a watercolor journal or something like that. I'm not really trying to do photorealistic. This isn't going in a museum or anything. I'm really trying to learn how to sketch, guys. Like, I don't know how to do this. So I'm just looking at the shapes and trying to figure it out. Here I'm going to rework this little balloon. And so now I've got my main shapes, my main outlines. I want to go back and take a closer look at the contours of that and rework those lines a little bit. I decided kind of how I wanted to do the stems here. The first stem that I drew was coming down off of the balloon, and then these flowers are so close together, I had to figure out how I was going to draw them so that you would be able to tell which stem went with which flower. Because it looks like this one that I'm working on now comes straight off of that balloon. It actually doesn't, it goes to the large flower. So that's going to come in with the shading and it will be more apparent which is which. Here, I thought it was unbalanced with 2 elements, so I decided to add another little balloon down on this right-hand side versus where it is in the photo. And I opted not to do any leaves because I felt like this was really enough for me at this point. I felt like leaves would kind of up the ante a little bit and make it a little even more challenging. So I kind of just stuck to these 3 flowers here. I'm just adding just one little crease, and here's where I'm going to rework some of these lines because they just didn't look quite right. They needed a little more curve to them. So I'm just looking at the photo a little more and trying to figure this out. It doesn't look right still, but I'm just going to keep reworking it. And really, rather than like a white eraser like that, I would recommend like a kneaded eraser, and then you could just like roll it over the paper instead. You don't want to be rubbing on watercolor paper too much because it's going to take off the surface of the paper, and then your watercolors aren't going to sit right on the page. So this is looking a little better. I'm getting a little more curve, a little bit more of a natural shape to that balloon in there. So I'm happy where it is right now. So I decided to grab a fine liner. This one is from Alta News, new set of fine liner pens, and this is the O2 pen. I also use Sakura microns. Those are really good as well. Copic fine liners are great. You know, whichever fine liner you have should work as long as it's waterproof. You just want to make sure it's waterproof since I am going to watercolor this. So I'm going to come down with my stem, and I'm doing this in a sketchy style. I'm not doing complete lines. I think a sketchy style is way more forgiving. Of course, there I do a solid line, which looks really out of place compared to the rest of this drawing. So you're going to see that that area doesn't quite look right in the end, and I think that's part of it is because it's a solid line, and also because that should actually be more than one petal. That arced part that I put there, I think that that should be 2 petal halves, not 1. So I'm trying to look at the contour of the petals. Some of them are bowed out, some of them are bowed in. This petal right there that I just put that line on, it's way too pointy. The reason that happened is because I need to slow down with the sketching. You want to slow down and take your time. Your stroke should be deliberate. Each stroke should have a purpose, but I was kind of panicking a little bit because I don't know what I'm doing. And I just need to slow down. And I think slowing down would help a lot in the next sketch when I do this again. At the end of this, after I watercolor, I decide to add a little bit more paint or a little bit more pen with some like cross hatching, and I totally shade in the wrong area, you guys. Like I shade flowers all the time, right? Flowers are my thing, it's what I color, but because I was just kind of like panicking a little bit, I totally put them in the wrong place. So you can tell that they're flowers, so I'm really happy with that. There's definitely some petals that I'm not really happy with. There's some shading that I'm not really happy with. It doesn't look super realistic or anything like that, but here I'm trying to make sure you can tell that this stem is coming from that large open bloomed flower. So the way that I'm doing that is with the shading. I'm just adding a little bit of extra depth there so that it brings the other stem forward. And so now I need to pick my colors. So this is the palette where I mixed all of the colors from the part 2 video. Here's what we mixed and what we swatched. And I'm just picking out my colors. So I think I'm going to do a little Quin Violet, Quin Purple, probably some French Ultramarine. I'm pointing those out there, and I'll get those labels up there like we had in the last video. So I'll chat a little bit in the beginning of this painting, and then I'll throw on some music and interrupt the music here and there with tips. I'll also put up the colors and what I've mixed it with so that you guys know what I'm painting with. I don't know why. Again, I think I'm panicking because I'm like totally out of my comfort zone, but I approached this watercolor painting like I was Copic coloring. I'm totally starting with the darkest colors. What is that? That's totally not how you watercolor. Generally, when you watercolor, you start with your lightest color and then work your way up to the darkest. But I'm just totally out of sorts, you guys. It ends up working out fine in the end, and I kind of just keep working with it, so it's fine. But it just goes to show, you just don't quit on your projects. Just keep working at it. Even if it doesn't turn out perfect, you're gonna learn some stuff in the end. Like, I know next time, like, I don't want that sharp petal that's on the bottom there. It looks out of place and awkward, but and there's some things that I'll do differently with my shading. So I've learned some good lessons from this, and I know that I'll keep improving if I keep doing practice like this. So if you feel like you're learning from this video, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below. I'm going to pop on some music and I'll catch you back in a minute. One thing I will say is that this side of the paper seems to be taking to the watercolor a lot better than the side that we did the swatching on. So there definitely is a difference between the sides of the paper, even though there's not supposed to be in this journal. You're supposed to be able to use all sides of the paper equally. So I thought that was interesting and I should share that. If you're trying to create soft edges, then you want to drop wet paint onto wet paper. If you want some hard edges, then you want to take your wet paint to dry paper. And I wanted a variety of both. So here I'm just switching to a larger brush for the splatter because I wanted some larger droplets there. If you're having trouble getting your brush to splatter, then add some more water to it and you should get it to splatter really well. I feel like splatter can really mask a lot of imperfections, so pretty much everything that I do has some splatter on it. Plus I think it just adds a little bit of character, and I'm really pleased with that. It's definitely not perfect. There's room for improvement for sure, but it looks like a flower and I'm really happy with that. So I'd call that successful. So here again is our Phthalo Turquoise Daniel Smith watercolor swatch page. And so we used the QUINACRIDONE violets, the QUINACRIDONE purple, French ultramarine. We used the HANSA yellow light, the PERYLENE green, the red, transparent red oxide. So lots of those colors that we mixed, we put in here. Plus I mixed a couple more with the QUINACRIDONE. I think I mixed QUINACRIDONE rose and French ultramarine. Here I'm just adding my chop to sign my work. And so my middle name is Rain, so Amber Rain Davis. So I just do a little raindrop with my initials in it, AD. So I'll do a bit of shading and then this piece will be done. Here's a closer look, and I do end up adding a squiggly line at the bottom just to ground the image. And after it was all said and done, I decided to come back in with the pen and add some hash marks to just kind of deepen the shading a little bit. And again, I wasn't really thinking, I was kind of rushing. I'm totally shading on the wrong side of the line there. That's where the highlight should be, not where the shading is. So I'm just kind of going through the motions and not really thinking. One thing you want to do when you're making art is really be present through the whole process. Don't rush, take your time, and think about what each stroke is supposed to be before you put it down. If you guys learned something today or got value out of this video, please show your support and appreciation by hitting that like and subscribe button down below. This is a new series for me, very different from what I normally do, and I'd love to know what you think, so leave me a comment down below. If you missed part 1 or part 2, definitely make sure you go back and watch those, and let me know if you'd like to see more in this series. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you soon with more inspiration.